Kimberly Stuart, welcome to That's For Sure podcast.
Well, it's such a delight to be with you, Carrie. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, I am just thrilled to have you on the show. And I think we'll get into a little bit of how you and I met a little bit later on. But maybe just to start, would you mind just introducing yourself? Who is Kimberly Stuart?
Oh my gosh, that sounds so existential. I am, I'd say first I'm a mom of 3 and a wife of 1. Mark and I have been married almost 25 years, which means we are nearing geriatric stage. We live in Iowa with our 3 kids who are high school, college, high school, not in that order. And in my other non-toilet scrubbing times and cooking and cleaning the kitchen, which is probably 90% of my waking hours, I'm also a writer and a podcaster. And I do some writing coaching with a mutual friend of ours, Bob Goff. And Bob and I also do some really fun things out in California. We have writing retreats out there, which is where you and I met. And then we also are teaching a class right now at San Quentin Maximum Security Prison in Northern California. So when you hang out with Bob, you get into all sorts of fun adventures. And a lot of the things that I just mentioned came out of our friendship. So fun things.
Sure. Yeah. Very fun things. I love saying that, I have a friend who goes to prison because it's like recurring, you go to prison often. I too have been to prison, a maximum state in Massachusetts, and it's quite the experience. So
it is. It is.
I
learned so much every time. I am the curious learner in that crowd. Also, I feel a lot of gratitude that I can leave when I want.
Right.
So that's a beautiful privilege that I don't take lightly.
Sure. Well, you mentioned you're from Iowa. I don't know if you know this, but I have frequented your state on a couple occasions.
I sure do not. What brought you to this place? I don't think we've
talked about this. Yeah, I have hightailed it through the Interstate 80 on 2 occasions. In 2004, I was headed eastbound. In 2006, I was headed westbound, and I flew right through. But I stopped in the capital of your state, a name I cannot say. And
Des Moines, that's where I live.
Des Moines. Okay,
yes.
I don't know why. It's so hard for me to say. Can't look at it.
The S's are silent. So Des Moines. It's French for the Moines. We don't really know what it means. I think monks named it. Could be the monks. We don't know.
Sure.
It's a mystery. But don't say the S's and you're good. Des Moines.
Oh, thank you for that helpful tip. You learn something new every day. Very kind people. You are among them, and just a very beautiful state. I love Iowans. So thank you.
I do too. I think it's the best kept secret. It's just such a great spot. I actually grew up here and then left for a decade. We lived in Costa Rica and Chicago and Minneapolis and Houston and Iowa City, Lincoln, Nebraska. We kind of were all over for school for me and for Mark. And we came back and I was a little bit snotty about it at first. Like, I've already lived there. I don't need to live there again. It has been the best place for our family. We just love it that, and you're right, the people make it a really special place. That, and they started pouring money into the downtown. And so it used to be like insurance land that would close down at 5. And now there are fun things to do. So it's good. It's a good spot.
That.
Yeah.
I love that.
Next time you're hightailing through east or west, you better stop.
I will
now
stop.
You know somebody.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
I love it. I love it. Well, you mentioned you're a writer, and I know we're going to talk about coaching in just a minute, but I'd love if you could just share a little bit about how you got your start writing. You've written 8 novels.
Yes.
What are, the events that led to you beginning to write these wonderful novels that you've written?
Loneliness and desperation. I was every time, right?
Yeah.
I was a teacher. I was an ESL and a Spanish teacher, and I loved it. Loved the work, loved the kids, loved fellow faculty members. I really enjoyed that work. And we started a family. Anna is 20. So it's 20 years ago. And I was home with her, and I wanted to be home with her, but I was noticing that more of my extroverted impulses and communicative impulses were being stymied. she was great. She was a great newborn, but she didn't talk to me.
Right.
So when Mark would come home every day, I would pepper him with questions about his life on the outside. And he was in dental school. And so his stories were so lame-o, but it didn't matter. I was like, tell me all of them. And what happened when you mentioned gingiva?
Yeah.
So he was alarmed because I seemed like a very different person than the woman that he married. And so he actually was the one that said, there's a clunky old laptop of yours, and you've always said that you wanted to write. So maybe this is the time. And if you've had young children in your house, you know that the moments of silence are fleeting. So there was no grand plan. I surely did not have any idea what I was embarking upon. It really was more a space for me to remember who I was, to kind of rediscover what all of this family imagery was when in the Bible. I started reading about how God loved me like a mother loves her children. And I thought, what? Because I kind of understood that in a different way.
Yeah.
And then those times were also spaces where I could kind of lean into how much lunacy comes with being a mom and being a new parent. I was so tired. My friends and I would call each other and laugh about the most irreverent and hilarious moments. But then when I would go to the bookstore to find something that would feed that, they were all very serious parenting books, or even the memoir or whatever. They weren't funny at that time. There's a lot larger selection now, and particularly in the faith space, oh my gosh, I could not see myself on those shelves. I mean, no one had any problems. They were all like, 5 steps to perfect discipline and, whatever. That wasn't my life. just wanted a little bit of sleep, honestly.
Yeah.
So, I wrote into the space that I wanted to read. And I think that's what a lot of writers would say is the beginning of their work, writing into the gap on the shelf. You become, you create where you think there's something missing. And I think that's probably what I have still held true even now. You mentioned I wrote 8 novels. That was all into writing kind of writing for my friends, writing for that gap on the shelf. And I have a new nonfiction book coming out in early 2024. And that 100% is also into that same vein. Well, where are my friends? What do we talk about? What do we need to know? Where are we connecting? So I think most writers do end up writing into that gap, into a space where they think, gosh, I'm not sure if anyone's talking about this, or I really feel like I could encourage somebody in that same space and I'm not finding anything for myself. So that little nudge can end up becoming a book or 8 or 9. It surely did for me.
Yeah. Well, you are a gifted writer, a hilarious writer. I mean, I think I may have sent you or a little text or told you at one point I was flying not too long ago, and everybody has their phones or some kind of device to watch a movie, but not me. I was on that plane with one of your novels and I was literally crying tears, laughing at just how fun it was to read. It's so funny.
That's
you are
so
such
kind.
a funny, well, you're just funny in general, but you are such a funny writer, which I feel like takes such a special skill to be able to write humorly, but relatably at the same time. So
that's so kind. I'm so honored you took me on your trip. You're right. Nobody brings books anymore. I was on a flight the other day and there was a man, bless his heart, hashtag bless and bless and bless. He was elderly, I would say, and was trying so hard to be a good plane person, but he had his phone and earbuds, like wired earbuds plugged into his phone. But I think he thought that they were working and they were not. And he was blasting whatever sitcom he was watching. And the teenager next to him was just perishing bit by bit. It was awesome. And I thought to myself, this never used to happen when we just had books. You should take out a book. Books aren't loud. So thank you for taking my book on a plane. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, it was awesome. So you are just a fantastic writer. And you mentioned coaching with Bob Goff. And that's how you and I met when I visited the Oaks in, spring of 2022.
Oh my gosh.
Feels forever ago. And also just like yesterday. And you co-host this amazing writers retreat at the Oaks alongside Bob. And the instant you began speaking and teaching and just imparting your wisdom of writing upon us as a group, I just knew that I wanted to be your friend, and because of how relatable you are. And so when it comes to coaching, I was just one of many. You have coached dozens of people, dozens of aspiring writers, from all walks of life, all backgrounds, from the business executive to the pastor to the single mom to the mom of littles trapped at home all day, to the influencer. Like, why do you do what you do? Like, why is coaching in this season an important part of what you do?
What a great question that no one has ever asked me. First, I would say it is such an honor. It is an honor. My work is such a gift to me. So I know how it feels to be staring at that blinking cursor and to think, I have no idea what to do right now, or to read what you've just written and think, I know that there's something missing and I'm not sure how to tweak it, or how to be tens of thousands of words into a manuscript and absolutely wholeheartedly want to throw it out the window and think there is nothing new in here. No one's going to read this other than my blood relation. And even them, they probably won't do it. Mm-hmm. So I just know how lonely and isolating that the life of a creative can be. Most of book writing is very much on your own and very much not knowing if it will connect with other people. And so the coaching for me is such a gift to be able to do something that, again, I wanted. I would have loved to have somebody on page 78 say, okay, let's tweak this. I know what you're trying to say, but it's falling flat and I have some ideas of how to help. Oh my gosh, I just would have cried all the time. Right. To have somebody who is, that you trust. It's a building. I count it an honor because I know how vulnerable it is to submit pages to people. Mm-hmm. And that does not change with time in the business. I've been doing this for 17 years. I don't feel any less nervous submitting my work to an editor or to a beta reader than I did 17 years ago. It's just very, very scary. It's very scary. It's very different from writing a paper for school, an essay for school. Those come and go. And really, do you really care about, is your professor going to be hanging out with you in 10 years? Likely not. But to friends or to people who are able to write an Amazon review, that feels so scary. And so I count it a total privilege to be in that moment, to be in those early days, one of the co-travelers. I'm on the same road. It just happens that I've been doing it for a couple more minutes. And so why do I coach? For totally selfish, joyful reasons. I love it. I love being the person that others trust with their words. It's a sacred duty. I love it. And I also love that God, I didn't even know this was a job. So it's to encourage your listeners. There are things down the pike that you might not even know exist that God is clearing the path for. This would not probably have happened without a pandemic. This particular gig, we didn't know we could do this. We didn't know we could sit behind a mic and load up. I didn't even know what Zoom was. I was Skyping. Right. Who's Skyping anymore? Right. Sorry, Skype. Skype is not a sponsor of this podcast. I just didn't know. We didn't know that we had the capacity for this. And so I wouldn't have written this job description because I didn't know it existed. And I love how God has taken disparate parts of my past. I see teaching in here. I see some things that I did in grad school that felt like total eye rolling at the time that paved the way for how I go about this work. Friendships and speaking and writing, all these different things that I thought were disconnected are fully connected. And I was ready to throw everything in the towel about 4 years ago. I was like, I've done 8 books. I'm done. That was good. This is too tiring. It's too much of a grind. I had 2 books come out really close together. And I was just kind of ready to toss it and start macrame or watercolor. And I'm so glad I didn't. I just didn't even know. I didn't know what was coming around the bend. So if you are in a moment now, dear listener, where you think, gosh, what could possibly be percolating here? I can't even see how these things are connected. Hold fast. Hold fast. Something is coming. Something's coming down the bend. You keep putting your feet one in front of the other and doing it with total surrender to Jesus, and you're going to see some fireworks coming down the pike.
Well, what you just did there is something that you are so good at, which is to encourage, whoever's right in front of you. And you have this ability, Kim, you did this with me through the coaching process. So I attended the retreat or the workshop and then signed up for coaching alongside with you and Bob. And one of the things you did for me, and you do this so well, is you have this ability to encourage, but you also have this ability to draw out the untold stories that so many of us walk around with each and every day that just need to be told. And I think they need to be told because when we are vulnerable and when we can share our stories, the good, the bad, the hard stuff, the good stuff, when we get to that place where we can share, one, it helps connect us to each other. We're reminded that we're not alone. Others have walked this road. We will never be alone. There will always be someone behind us who will walk this road. And it draws us closer together. And I think ultimately, when we're telling these stories that need to be told, not only are we connecting better with one another, but I think we get a better picture of who God is because if each one of us truly is made in his image, then the stories that we're living ought to reflect a little bit of who he is. And
that's it.
I think that's why the job that you do and what you do so well is so important because, for instance, you, Kim, I see you are incredibly kind. You're funny and you're nice and you're relatable and all these things, but ultimately you're kind. And when I experience your kindness, I ultimately experience God is kind. And I know that God is kind because I get to know Kim Stewart, who is very kind. And so you have this ability to just draw out stories that need to be told. And it makes me wonder, Kim, if not for writing, maybe not in this space for you, as you talked about really wanting someone, like how you are to others when you first started out. But I wonder has there been someone in your life who has just been that encourager, been that coach to you that has helped enable you to say, yeah, I am going to do the thing. I can step out and do the thing. Has there been someone who has been somewhat of a coach or a champion or an encourager of you in some space that has led you to accomplish what you've accomplished today?
I would like you to replay that over and over on a loop. Let's just stop this recording right now and have that be the end of the podcast. And you can play that 6 times. Also, can I play that for my children who need to be encouraged about my encouraging? That was very kind, Carrie. Thank you. What a beautiful, beautiful way. I think you're the encourager here for sure. Yes, I've had a bevy of people who have just assumed I could do things. The assumption piece is such a beautiful present, isn't it? To have someone in your life who just assumes, yeah, you're totally be able to do this. I mean, my grandmother was just relentless in her encouragement for me. My parents still think I can do all things. In fact, last week I was giggling because I was with my parents and my dad. I'm just going to say right now, I am not an athlete. Okay. I like to move and I like to exercise, but I'm like, I'll do yoga. I run a couple miles at a time. I'm not the athlete. I have 2 siblings who went and played college sports. Okay.
Wow.
So I am the ugly duckling in that regard. But I don't think my dad still knows. I'm 47. And he said to me the other day, you could have gone to, I can't remember what school, ridiculous school. I think you could have gone on a track scholarship. I was like, Dad, I'm 100,000% sure that would never happen. Unless you mean like they needed a water girl. I could be the water girl. So anyway, that has been part of the soundtrack of my life, just infusing courage in us as kids and as adults. But top of list in the last 25 has been Mark. My husband is so fully on my team. He just, he's even while dating, I remember saying, I feel like you're rooting for me. And he got emotional when I said that. And he said, I just want you to know that. And that is an unusual way to begin, I think, when you're in your 20s and you don't know anything. But that's just who he is. He absolutely assumes that with a little grit, we'll be able to figure it out. Grit and surrender to the Lord. Those are the two. And so I would say that, when I leave my office or I come home after something, he wants to know all the things. And also it says out loud in front of our kids, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you and how you are living your life. And I'm so grateful we get to do this together. And he really does see this as we're running in the same direction. That is a precious, precious thing. And I know not everybody has that. Mm-hmm. I would say being that person for other people tends to attract like minds, but not always. And sometimes you have to wait and sometimes you have to pray for that. It's a sweet gift. I don't take it for granted. Mm-hmm. I know it's oxygen on the fire, and you can do most things, I think, when you have somebody who believes in you like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been that for me. I mean, you have stewarded this gift of encouragement so well that, you walked with me through my writing journey, all the ups and downs and, multiple states. I was all over the place and during the process, and I have a finished book, and Amazing. That is because you have stewarded the gifts that God has given you and enabled you so well. And so thank you for that. What can you share with us about your new book? Can you?
Well, it was an honor to be with you in that process, Kara. I do want to say that. And I do want to say, you and I talked a lot about every now and then, I think every writer gets to a point where they're like, I don't know, is this worthwhile? And is anybody going to read this? And who is going to read this? And also, does it matter? Does it matter that I'm spending all of this extra time? I mean, you have a busy family. You have 2 boys waiting probably outside a door right now for you to finish whatever you're doing so you can go back to life with them. I fully identify with that. And so there are other things. There are always other things. And if you prioritize writing your stories, there aren't any times in your life, I don't think, where all of a sudden someone says to you, here, take 6 months and write your thoughts. It's not going to happen.
No.
So you have to have something higher, an elevated purpose in doing that. And I know for you, there were 2 things. You wanted to honor God with your words, right? And to write them down in a way that honored him. That propels you in your life, Carrie. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was, we talked about this a lot, even if nobody but your 2 sons read this book, then that was a worthwhile cause. And I am fully behind that. I mean, what a precious, beautiful thing it would be if we all had books written by our moms. Or books written by our grandmothers or our great grandmothers. I mean, what? I can't even imagine. I would fork over a lot of cash to have the memoirs or the thoughts of people who've gone before me, because I know I'm standing on their shoulders, and that a lot of the blessing that has come generation to generation was from their quiet faithfulness. Yeah. So if you're thinking, I'm not sure if it's worthwhile for me to write my story, who's going to write my story? The God of the universe chose to use story to reveal himself to us. Right. He did not give us a bullet point list. He did not send a pamphlet. He didn't give us a short film. He lived story and told story. And even while God himself was on earth, he used story to tell the story. So there's something about that. We have to pay attention to that. And I think we need to value it the way that he does. Yeah. So you did that. So well done.
Thank you.
Well done, author girl. I can't remember your question. What was, the new book.
Yes. Okay. What can you share? Tell us about it.
The new book is called Star for Jesus. And then in parentheses, it's And Other Jobs I Quit.
I love it.
And the subtitle is Rediscovering the Grace That Sets Us Free. And this book has been probably in the making for about 2 decades. I started really thinking about grace in my 20s. I'd heard that word all of my life, but didn't encounter it in a way that kind of sunk into my bones until starting in college. And since then, I've done this dance with it. A lot of agreeing, nodding with God. Yes, you are a God of grace. Yes, I need grace. And then turning around and saying, I'll see you later. I'm going to go, earn my way back to you. It's a beautiful, deep, rich word, but it's also a very common word. I feel like once you see a word on a pillow at TJ Maxx, it's time to brush the dust off of it.
Right.
And look
Agreed.
at it again. Like, what does it really mean when it's not $14.99?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this book was in some ways the most joyful writing process I've had, because there are a lot of personal story and a lot of kind of revisiting how this thread of how I've decided not to be a tap dancer for God, and that I don't need to be a star for him. And actually his grace is fully, beautifully enough.
Mm.
And it was also hard to write, because in fiction, when I get sick of people, I can kill them off.
Right.
And there's no killing off when you're writing true stories. I think it's a timely book. We are in a moment where culturally, I think we have really gotten confused about the value of grace. Mm-hmm. And the power that it has to extend grace to ourselves and also to other people. So it's one of those evergreen things for me that I never get to the point where I'm like, oh, I fully understand this now, even after spending a lot of time thinking about it and a lot of time reading and researching and wondering and musing and praying and writing. I am definitely not the grace expert, not even close, which says to me, I'm probably getting closer. I'm probably getting closer if I'm still able to live in that tension of, boy, this is the sweetest gift I've ever been given, and I hardly even understand it. Yeah. So I love it. I'm proud of this book. I'm not always proud of my books when they go to the copy editor, because I think, oh, I'm not sure about that character and I'm not sure about this. And this time I feel like this is the best book I can write at this point. And I'm grateful for it. We'll see if it hits a note to anybody else. My mother has promised to read it. That's all I know. So.
Well, I promise to read it as well.
Thank you.
I will be pre-ordering the second that it's available, and we're going to be sure to, link to the pre-sale orders as well as your podcasts and coaching and things like that in the show notes. But Kim, I have two more questions for you to wrap us up here. One is, because the show is called That's For Sure, and because of your experience, your 17, years of writing and authoring, and now podcasting, because of your experience, what do you know to be absolutely true about God?
Well, I would say without a doubt, even though sometimes I act like this is not true, I know that God's love for me is stubborn. It is stubborn and bottomless. And I know he's good. I've been thinking a lot about the goodness of God. This summer, we went to a place called Hope Heals Camp down in Alabama. It's just a remarkable place. Catherine and Jay Wolf, if you don't know about this place, please go right now. Turn this off. Yep. Go to hopeheals.com. They do beautiful work. And they have a camp down in Alabama. They do 3 weeks. It's a family camp for anybody in the family experiencing disabilities. The families come free of charge, and the volunteers pay to be a part of it all in this mutual ministry in the absolute worst weather known to humans. But it doesn't even matter, because so many beautiful things are happening. And one of the songs we sang over and over this summer was about the goodness of God, and that all of my life you have been faithful. All of my life you've been so, so good. With every breath I'm able, I will sing of the goodness of God. And standing in a room full of people who have had to really wrestle with that question, right? Mm-hmm. It's one thing to say it at VBS, and it's another thing when your child will never walk and will never speak, and takes all of their food through a G-tube, or your mom has a stroke and goes through, she's unrecognizable to you. The volume in that room of people with this anthem, I believe in I have lived in the goodness of God. I know that to be true. I know he is good. I do not always understand what he's doing, but I trust him because he has these years, this wake of faithfulness behind me. He's 100% trustworthy. There's not one part of him that does something, allows something in my life that is not rooted in his goodness. So that'll take you home.
Yep.
That will take you home.
Yeah. No, that is so good. His stubborn love and his goodness. That's so good. Final question, Kim.
Okay.
What or who in your life is bringing you just this unexpected joy?
Oh, well, let me think. I've got a lot of really great people right now who are being really good to me. I am loving hanging out with my kids as they become who they are. So Anna's 20, Mitchell is 17, and Thea is 15. And they are really great. Despite their mother, they seem to be really figuring out who they are. I love our dinner conversations. They are wild. They've always been wild. But amid the raucous laughter, I'm seeing glimpses of, what lights them up, what they're going to be pursuing individually as they continue to study and work and figure out what God has wired them to do. It's so fun. I feel like I'm in a very fun stage of parenting. Now, the conversations sometimes are real hard, right? So there's no longer here, let's just sit down and watch a little Sesame Street and it'll feel better.
Sure.
But there's even joy in that because they're thinking on their own and processing on their own and pursuing Jesus on their own, at their own pace and in their own way of questioning. And I am here for it. That's bringing me a lot. And Mark, we're just a lot of joy right now.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. It makes me, I love the season that I'm in with my littles.
Yeah.
But gosh, you're right. It is so fun to watch them grow, and it makes me excited for, their future and watching them just continue to grow and take on their own little personalities and their own little, desires and wants and all of that. And so thank you.
Press on, Mama. It's coming.
Yes.
All sorts of fun things are coming. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Kim, thank you so much for taking the time to be on That's For Sure podcast. You are just an absolute gift. I consider it just one of my greatest blessings to know you and to have gone through this last year or so with your coaching. And I'm your biggest fan. I will always be the first the second after your mom, maybe the third after Mark, to order your books and just be cheering you on from afar. And I will absolutely call you next time I'm hightailing through the state of Iowa. So
victory. That is that's the goal. Listen, I'm the grateful one. I've told you before. I will say it again. Your book is beautiful. Your stories are beautiful. I'm just grateful to have a front row seat to it all. So thank you for letting me come and chat with you.
Thanks, Kim.